Hey guys, thank you so much for being here today. We're going to begin our Q&A with these brothers who have been some of the key voices and leaders in the conversation on the abolition of abortion. I'd like to begin by asking each of you just to take a minute and don't repeat, Dusty, don't repeat what he said. What are some of the more common arguments you guys are dealing with against the abolition position by the pro-life establishment?
So I think the person who has dealt best with this and that I've learned the most from is Bradley Pierce from the Foundation to Abolish Abortion. So I just want to say, if you want resources on that specific issue, I would go to their website, and he has incredible resources to read there. So these are the kind of objections that we get, and I'm just doing this on the spur of the moment. I may forget some of these, and these guys may want to fill in others, but we hear things like, okay, so what about a woman who is coerced into abortion? Do you believe she should be prosecuted? No. And by the way, equal protection laws, they would simply protect the child in the womb with the same laws that already protect you and me. And so what would happen is that there would be due process, and you would have a prosecutor look at what has happened there, and he would ask the question, who is responsible for the death of this person, this child? Well, if she was coerced, the one who coerced her is responsible. The best way to say this is, abolitionists, we don't believe in punishing the young woman who was coerced into an abortion. We believe in punishing the one who coerced her. Just like on the rape issue, we don't believe in killing the child because he or she was conceived in rape. We believe in punishing the rapist. And so these objections, what about this, what about that, these are already taken care of in law. And as people begin to understand things like mistake of fact. What if she genuinely does not know what she was doing? I mean, you could take someone who is mentally handicapped and might be made to have an abortion unaware, you know. I've seen that before, you know. And so what we need to consider here is our laws already take care of all these different issues and questions, and we don't need to create new laws. Our homicide code takes care of this. So those objections, I think, are already handled under current law.
Dusty, what are you hearing?
That's good. I think in a lot of states they say, well, the people aren't quite ready for bills of abolition. The people will only vote for or accept a heartbeat bill. So we can't do it yet. We need to slowly, incrementally move closer and closer. Well, there's a lot of things that are in that, but I think it's best to say, well, if the people aren't ready, why? Is it because well, let me just cut to the chase. They're not ready because there's callousness and hardness of heart. That's it. Now, why have they gotten there? Well, sin, we're all sinners. We have to be trained by the Scriptures. And if we aren't being trained by the Scriptures, but we're being trained by some pragmatic worldly wisdom, then that's another reason why people wouldn't be ready. And who would do that? Well, secular people would. And a secular movement that doesn't use God's word would train people to not be ready to receive a righteous bill that would protect all lives from conception and fertilization. And that's what the pro-life movement has been doing. Since 1973, the pro-life establishment has never run a bill of equal protection from fertilization, which is conception, which would criminalize the act of prenatal homicide, we know as abortion. They even have gone so far as to say in their letter that they wrote last, 2 years ago? May 12, 2022, whenever I was here with Brian at the Capitol, the 77 pro-life organizations wrote a letter and said two main things that are the pillars of pro-life, of the pro-life establishment. The first pillar is women are always victims. And they didn't say this in their letter, but some others have, they may be morally culpable if they killed their child with malice aforethought, but they should never be legally culpable. That's the first pillar. Women are always victims of abortion from an industry or whatever.
They've been taught that for 50 years in this country.
Yeah, they've been taught that.
So she, bless her heart, she can't do anything but do that.
So they're infantilizing women. They just don't have enough. They're just not smart enough. They don't have the moral agency to recognize that that's a child and a human life.
It seems to me that some of this argument, that they place examples like that, where there might be a lady showing up at an abortion clinic who literally just doesn't understand. What percentage of women are showing up at abortion mills or are taking abortion pills? What percentage, in your opinion, from your experience, are doing that willfully, intentionally, under no coercion, knowing exactly what they're doing?
I mean, from the time that I've been at abortion mills, Blake and Brian can also speak to this, it's infinitesimal. That they're the ones who are being coerced or not doing it willfully.
1%? Less than 1%?
Maybe less.
25%?
I would say less than 10%. And I'm basing this on having been to abortion clinics in Texas and Louisiana, spending hours out there. I don't know how many times, probably a few hundred times over the years when I was doing that, when those clinics were open. And I did it on a weekly basis for most of those years. And I just remember the vast majority knew what they were doing. And you would tell them, don't kill your child. And they would say, I can do what I want, it's my choice. They often wouldn't even object to the fact that they were murdering their child. They would just say that I can do it. And then profanity through that. So I would just say there have been some cases. I've seen some women with Down syndrome who were pregnant, who were made to have an abortion, and they truly did not. They were raped to begin with. And so, those are heartbreaking, tragic situations. I've seen that at the abortion clinic. The first time I ever went to the abortion clinic, I watched a girl who I would estimate was 13 or 14 years old being pulled into the abortion clinic by her hair by her mother. I've told that story many times. That was the first day I ever went. So that was a shocking thing to see. But I would say probably a lot less than 10%, but less than 10% of the women who I have personally witnessed have abortions, and I've seen thousands walk in and out of these clinics. I'd say less than 10%.
Blake, one of the other objections I've read quite a bit concerns you guys are wanting to prosecute women who had an ectopic pregnancy. Is that true?
No. What we desire, what abolition affirms, is that a doctor, and that bills that abolition, that a doctor should take every avenue necessary to save both mother and child. But no, an ectopic pregnancy is not there is an exception for that in bills of abolition, and so for the ones I've seen for ectopic pregnancies, but still, even in that, who knows what God is going to do? I think people immediately run to abortion when they think an ectopic or whatever it may be. But what we're saying is that instead of a woman coming in and saying, I want an abortion, and a doctor do it, that the doctor and the surgical staff or whoever take every possible means necessary to save both mother and baby. And now I want to answer one of those other questions here in a moment.
Go ahead.
You ask about why we live in a very conservative state, and we have a conservative legislature. So in Oklahoma, our biggest opponents are not pro-abortionists, but are pro-lifers, and specifically Oklahoma Right to Life and others have really opposed what we are trying to accomplish in Oklahoma. And I believe for those who know what pro-life is, and when I say know, they know, why would they oppose? Why do leaders of organizations know and willingly oppose abolition? I'm going to give you 3 reasons. Because they fear man more than God. Bottom line. Second thing is they fear man, and they avoid, and because they fear man, they avoid things, right? When you fear man more than God, you're going to avoid certain subjects. You're going to avoid certain topics. And that's what we see. We see a fear of man, an avoidance of being willing to address the issue. I think we see this with pastors a lot too. It's like they know it's wrong, they believe in the tenets of abolition, but yet they're non-vocal. Why? Why would you not speak up? And I think these things, fear of man, which causes people to avoid topics, and then lastly, the seeking of your own glory. If you seek your own glory and not the glory of God, then you are going to make your decisions based upon how it helps you climb the ladder. If I stand up for this, I'm not going to be asked to serve on this committee. I'm not going to be asked to do this certain thing. I'm not going to be asked to preach on this platform. I'm not going to be considered the bigwig guy, or I'm not going to be asked to serve on a certain committee with the legislators or whatever it may be. And so a lot of them have their own careers, their own positions on their heart. And when that happens, they're afraid if they come out and support what others might say. Well, that just tells me that you're seeking your own glory rather than the glory of God. And as far as, I would tell you that when the church is at the mill, 100% of those women know what they're doing when they walk in. When the church is there. And what I mean by that is when the church is there, the church is telling them what they're doing as they're walking in. Now, when the church isn't there, I don't know what the percentage is, but in my experience, I would say overwhelmingly. They'll give you the bird and say, I know what I'm doing.
So
and,
when you guys mention the law code, and the law code has ways to work through some of these issues, isn't this, though, in some ways, some of the problem? You're wanting to completely, totally outlaw abortion, so you're going to overwhelm and flood the judicial system with frivolous cases. The neighbor is going to report her pregnant neighbor who had an ectopic pregnancy, and this doctor over here who's scared to death that she's going to lose her license is going to report every miscarriage that comes in because perhaps the young lady took a pill at home, and that's what caused the miscarriage. And so now the judicial system, already pressed, is just going to collapse.
Well, is life worth it? There may be a great swell whenever bills of abolition passed that we have to work through to get to stasis. But I think it's worth it if we truly value life, that we want to give equal protection. And if somebody was threatening your life, we should know about it. So the same would be for children. Now, is it really going to happen? There might be a bump, but that's typically not how things work. First, the law would train these women what murder is and what the value that we place on human life. So the law is a tutor. We know this from Romans. We know it from Galatians 4. The law teaches, that's the third or the second use of the law, it teaches a society what is just and what is right and good. So if we don't have laws that aren't teaching them, then so be it. That's awful. But if we start to implement that law, then these women are going to stop doing it. We have women in my church who committed an abortion who said, if the law would have told me that this is murder, that this is illegal, I wouldn't have done it.
See, I knew it. You guys aren't only interested then in abolishing abortion. You're just abolitionists in general. So what's next on your list? What's the next item? We get abortion abolished here. I mean, you're really wanting to set up a theonomy here. What's the next item on your list that you're wanting to abolish?
I want to abolish pornography. I want to abolish no-fault divorce. I want to abolish any number of great evils, and according to God's word.
Yeah, I believe it's, and I would say that it ought to be abolished.
You can give your campaign donations to Dusty Deevers for Oklahoma Senate. No,
But I'm not running for Senate.
I agree with Dusty, and I want to go back to what you said a moment ago. All these objections, you're going to flood the legal system. That might sound like a convincing argument for someone who has absolutely no idea how our justice system works. Prosecutors look at a report and they decide if there is enough evidence. The reality is we aren't bringing charges against everyone for every report that is made in America. And this is how we handle all crimes. And so now that we understand that a prosecutor has discretion and examines evidence, and this process will not move forward until a prosecutor decides that there is enough evidence to move forward. Once we understand that, then we need to ask the question, okay, so what crimes should our justice system focus on punishing? Like what should be their priority? And I just suggest that murder should be a pretty big priority in our justice system. So the argument that you're going to flood the justice system with all these cases, that is an argument for not prosecuting murder. Notice, the person didn't object to the biblical truth that abortion is murder. They just objected to prosecuting murderers. That's a big problem.
Dusty, you listed off a number of things. Sounds like you would have fit in just perfectly in this country circa 1960. Because many of those things that you listed in 1960 were illegal and in cases prosecuted in this country. Statistics show us that 60% of the country is pro-choice, 40% pro-life. We just saw the situation this week in Ohio. The conservatives in Ohio sought to move the standard for changing the Constitution from 50+1 to 60%, and most people understood that to be an attempt by the pro-life establishment to codify into Ohio state law, Constitution, right to life. So everyone is understanding that come November, there's going to be some movement by the left to make pro-choice the law of the land. So maybe we could say in Ohio, they just don't have Shouldn't we be moved of the argument? Shouldn't we be positioning ourselves in incremental steps so that we don't end up doing what we don't want happening, codifying into state constitutions all across this country the actual right to abortion?
So I think the difference on the issue of homosexuality and the issue of prenatal homicide is, murder is much more easily tracked, and you can ban because somebody's going to get pregnant and then they're not pregnant, and there's enough evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, or in which medical tests and other things can verify that. That's different than trying to, do something that's going to ban something that's private or public. Can you ban some? You don't want to, so banning private abortion. That's not a thing. You should just ban murder. But then if you want to ban something that someone practices in their home, and then versus what's public, it's a different category of crime or sins. And I think having those categorical arrangements are going to be important. So whenever we talk about then incrementalism, that was going to be the second thing that I was talking about with that letter. They treat all women as victims. And then the second thing is they want to move abortion to where it might be unthinkable or unnecessary. That's what the ERLC talks about, which is interesting because
Are you funding the ERLC at your church?
No. I didn't know the ERLC was hyper theonomic in the sense that they want to make abortion unnecessary. That's kind of like a post-mill argument, isn't it? It becomes unnecessary because everybody's converted. I didn't know the ERLC was like that. But either way, I thought they were otherwise in their eschatology. But they want to make it unnecessary or unthinkable. Why? Well, they want society and people to change and grow and get to a place where we just don't have it. But that in that letter, they said they will never support any legislation that would criminalize the act of prenatal homicide when a mother commits it with malice aforethought. Now, they didn't say it quite like that, but they said they would never support any bills that would grant equal protection and criminalize the act of abortion. They said it then. House Resolution 464, that's been promoted as the North Star, that's recently been put forward by some pro-life organizations. In Article 3, towards the end of the resolution, it says that they will not support any prosecution of women who kill their preborn children with malice aforethought. Now, they don't say malice aforethought, but they talk about prosecuting women. So that is the foundation. So if they're moving incrementally to what are they moving to? They will never move to that place of criminalizing the act of prenatal homicide. So the law that they're promoting will always make space. It's always going to leave room for prenatal homicide because it won't criminalize it. It won't grant equal protection. So they're bills of partiality, and God hates that. They make the innocent the prey, and they make the wicked around them, and even the legislation itself as the predator towards the children. So we can't pursue incrementalism in that sense.
Okay, let's come back to one of these misunderstandings as it relates to miscarriages, or how do we know that was not an abortion? Dusty, go to your sheet here, birth control, and let me ask you a two-part question. Under the red, abortifacients, you list D and C, surgically induced abortions. Explain D and C.
Okay. Oh, yeah, dilation and curettage versus dilation and evacuation. This is what happens in surgical abortions. They dilate the cervix, and then they go in with curettage. They go in with devices, and they will cut up the child. They will pull it out, pull arms and limbs out. They will, in later term, they'll deliver partially and slice the brain stem. They use instruments. Evacuation is to use a vacuum that's, word is it's 8 times more powerful than a Dyson to suck the remains out of, and to pull children out and to tear them limb by limb.
As I understand it, D and C's are used often in miscarriage situations.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that was asked is a huge argument between abolition and pro-abortion crowds right now is that women are afraid D&Cs after and during miscarriage will no longer be allowed, therefore raising possible life-threatening concerns for women who aren't able to naturally pass a miscarriage. Can you give a little more insight on this distinction for those who are afraid of abolishing abortion for this specific reason?
Yeah, it's very simple. It comes down to intent. What is the intent of the medical staff and the mother? Is the intent to murder the preborn child, or is the intent to perform a medical procedure to save the life of the mother or protect the mother's life and remove a child that's already deceased? The intent is the core of it.
You know, that's a particularly absurd argument that I've heard, especially when we brought HB 813 in the Louisiana legislature a year ago. So think of this. They're saying that if we make this a crime, then women will be afraid to have a D&C in the case of a miscarriage, or physicians will be afraid to perform it. The difference is when there is a miscarriage and afterward a D&C, there is a dead child's body that has to be removed from the woman's womb so that she doesn't become septic. When you do an abortion, you're intentionally killing the baby. It would be just as absurd to make this argument. Oh, well, if we make murdering adults illegal, then if you come home and find that your spouse has had a heart attack and is deceased, you'll be afraid to call the coroner and report your deceased spouse because you might get charged with murder. If you didn't kill him, you're not a murderer. I mean, and by the way, women who go through miscarriages go through terrible pain. It is heartbreaking. My wife and I experienced a miscarriage. And then to somehow lump them in with women who have abortions and use that as a tool to argue against abolition, that is particularly cruel and heartless. And anyone who makes such a ridiculous argument should be ashamed.
Brian, where are we currently in this state? In other words, what is the current law concerning abortion in this state? Articulate Louisiana law.
It's perfectly legal for women to kill their preborn child in the state of Louisiana at any time, for any reason, without any consequences whatsoever. That is a true statement. It is illegal for anyone to sell the abortion pill. Now, all the other abortifacients that Dusty discussed, those are legal. But the abortion pill, RU46, that pill is illegal to sell in the state of Louisiana. But it is perfectly legal for a woman to purchase the abortion pill. But since she cannot purchase it from a pharmacy or anything, she would either have to purchase it illegally, or more commonly, she would go to another state, purchase the abortion pills, or what happens most often is she just orders it online.
So you're saying in the state of Louisiana, as it currently stands, there are that pharmacies, it is illegal for a pharmacist to dispense RU486.
That's right. Your local Walgreens sells the Plan B pill, but it does not sell RU486. So it is illegal for a pharmacy to sell the abortion pill, but it's perfectly legal for women to purchase, possess, and consume the abortion pill in the state of Louisiana. And I have spoken to people who work in local hospitals who have had women coming into the ER locally here. Women coming into the ER after having an at-home abortion, and there were complications, and so they sought medical care afterward. That's perfectly legal. There's no consequences whatsoever. And
so you said yesterday that there's been this massive rise in abortions in the state. So if it's illegal for them to go to Walgreens, CVS, or wherever else, where are these women getting these pills from? I mean, they can't all just be driving over to Texas.
If you pull out your cell phone right now and search abortion pill, you're going to find about a dozen people who can have an abortion pill in your mailbox by the end of next week.
So
Oh,
they
and
can't
by the
go
way-
to Walgreens down the road, but they can order it from a pharmacy out of state.
Yes, and it's legal for any woman to do that, but if you're a man, you could be prosecuted. You probably won't be, but it is illegal for a man to purchase or possess the abortion pill in the state of Louisiana now. It's only legal for women.
Blake, what is your church doing? Be specific. all of you guys, we'll start with Blake. What are your churches doing to, one, help educate the populace on abolition? What is your church currently doing in your own community to promote life, come alongside women who are pregnant and perhaps don't want the child? What are you guys very specifically doing in this way?
Do I need to use a mic? Oh, I got a mic, don't I? Okay. Well, there's several things that we do. We immediately, when the Lord changed my heart years ago, we immediately started an abortion meal ministry. So every Tuesday and Thursday, we would go to the abortion meal, and we would sing hymns and read scripture, and we would invite those who were coming in to have an abortion to come and speak with us. We would say, hey, give us 5 minutes of your time before you go in there. I just want to read some scripture, have some prayer, just let you know what God thinks about this place and what God thinks about this action. And if we get, depending on how they respond and they keep walking, then we turn into full-fledged preaching, because you have to, it's your last-ditch effort. I mean, when they get out of their car, you've got just a few minutes to get their attention. So you're like, hey, ma'am or sir, will you please come talk to me for just 5 minutes before you walk in? And if they don't respond to that or respond negatively or whatever, then you got just a short amount of time from that parking lot to that door to preach the gospel to them, tell them what God believes before they walk in there, because we are rescuing those who are being carried away to death. So we have to be urgent. Another thing that our church was doing was we, again, supporting bills of abolition. We've gone and lobbied, not officially, but unofficially, lobbied legislatures. We've educated legislatures on bills of abolition. Our church has budgeted for adoption, foster care, all those type of things. We have that in our budget. And then we have ladies in our church who are trained in abolition, who will meet with women who have an unexpected pregnancy or whatever it may be, and they'll sit down and talk with them and educate them. And so those are some of the things we're doing. I currently am serving on a board of an abolitionist organization. I was serving on a board of an abolitionist deal. And so working with them and helping them. Our church, just like you, we've educated our church on the pamphlet that you see. I've preached it from the pulpit. We've held conferences. I've done individual classes on it with certain groups of people in the church, all those different types of, those are just a few things that we've done. Supporting legislators who are going to run for office who actually will support bills of abolition. So,
Brian, you have the microphone. Go next. What is your church currently doing to educate, to come alongside young moms?
Yeah, so is it working? Okay. It's dead. So at First Baptist Church of Livingston, right now I'm focused on the legislative side of things. So one of the things that we will be doing is we are planning to have a bill of abolition in the spring in the Louisiana legislature. And in doing that, there's going to be a massive effort to educate. It's already ongoing, the state of Louisiana. And then one of the things that I'm committed to doing is hosting a conference, really not a conference, but a class where we will have a political expert come in and teach your average layperson, your regular church member, how to lobby legislators to pass our bill of equal protection and abolition. So my church is preparing and planning to do that. We are dedicated to passing a bill of equal protection in the state of Louisiana, and we will not stop until it's done. That's the first thing. For mothers, we just started a foster care and adoption ministry in Livingston Parish. And so our church gives 2% of every dollar that comes into our church to support foster care and adoption in Livingston Parish. And we're supporting a number of those families. There's a huge need for foster care and adoption really throughout America, but Livingston Parish is actually the greatest need of all 64 parishes in Louisiana, according to our DCFS. The support of pregnancy centers, I've started and helped start a number of pregnancy centers throughout my time working on these matters. So yeah, all of the above.
I'll be quick. We went to Abortion Mills. We preached out there, and we have now members who are preaching, street preaching through. They use signs, and some members from Blake's church as well. We all join on the streets there in Oklahoma to preach. We have an adoption and orphan care and adoption fund, and recently paid or gave to a couple who's doing IVF snowflake adoption. They've had a set of twins, and they're going to do another set from the same family. We have written booklets. We've written this kind of material. We talk about it regularly. I think I've published a book on IVF, in vitro fertilization, working on this booklet on birth control, running for state office so that we have representation. The church charged me to do this. They charged me to take up the duty for them and for others to do, to run for office, to abolish abortion, among other things. I'm the vice president of RescueThose.com, and it's a abolition organization. You can download our app on the app stores. I don't know, man, there's tons.
Dusty, by the way, you're running for Senate District out of Oklahoma, so tell the people how they can view your campaign platform.
Yeah, Deevers2023.com. There
Deevers 2023.com.
That's right. I have a video there and have some platform talking points. And you can friend me on Twitter, Dusty Deevers.
What's the max someone can donate to your campaign?
Well, it's good to ask. Thank you. $2,900 as a single person. You can give $5,800 as a married couple. So I'd sure appreciate any of that.
Can somebody stick some cash in your pocket this morning?
They can give it to me, and I will have to get their name, address, employer, and or organization that they work for, and occupation.
Well, great. Surely somebody here will do that for you today.
We can do that. Yeah. All that to say, it is going to be a hard race, and there are some folks who are pouring a lot of money in, but we will work heartily as unto the Lord and trust Him with the results, and know that if it is to be, then the Lord will bring it about.
If it is true, 60% of the American population is pro-choice, 40% is pro-life, you've got to drill down into that pro-life number. How many of that 40% are actually abolitionists? You got to think that number's even smaller. So obviously the mountain before us is rather large. You've got a group of people that gave up time, energy, resources to be here this weekend. What's one thing, I'm not asking for 5, what's one thing every person in this room can leave today and do over the course of the next month, 3 months, 5 months, year, to seek to persuade people to come to the abolitionist position?
Can I go first so I can
Yes.
give my answer and then let them do their thing? But I want to give the answer first so they don't steal it. But, and they talk most of the time. But here's the thing, is you need to know your state legislature by name. And he needs to know you by name, or she needs to know you by name. So you need to get to know your state representative.
Or Z by name.
Z? Huh? What? I didn't get it. I missed it. Huh? Oh, okay, I got it. So, yeah, I missed it. So you need to know here, you need to know your representative, your senator. You need to know them by name, and they need to know who you are. So, and they need to know what church you're a part of. And you need to email them every time and you need to stay in contact with them, whether it's shooting them an email once a month, once a quarter, whatever it may be. You need to stay, and they need to know you. And when they see your email pop up, they know what you're going to be talking to them about, what you're asking of them. Because most of those, you are their votes, you are their constituents. And so these folks that are running for re-election, you need to speak to them. They need to hear from you. And so that's one of the things I would say.
Well, I think one of the most important things for me early on was educating myself. I would read the scriptures and then go to resources that I knew were helping me train my mind and help me think through the different arguments that I was going to come across. Because I knew as soon as I went out and started talking with my family or my friends or church members, or I wanted to go to the legislation, or I wanted to go to the abortion mill, I needed to know what I was going to say. So I would go to Abolitionists Rising, it's plural, abolitionistsrising.com. I would go to rescuethose.com, and you can get really great resources there. The Foundation to Abolish Abortion, where Bradley Pierce is another one, FAA.life.
Pastor Travis, so we have everybody's email address at registered. We'll send you an email with all of these lists of resources.
Yeah, so educate yourself. One of the first things to do is learn about the 5 tenets of abolition. I think Travis might have taught on that before. I'll be teaching on it tomorrow morning during Sunday school. But learn about those things. It's because the more confident you get in the position, the better you are and more confident you're going to be in articulating it and being in those conversations, and do it prayerfully.
Well, I was going to tell everyone to go to FAA.life and educate yourself. And so I'm going to reiterate how helpful the resources that Bradley Pierce has put together are. He is a subject matter expert and an attorney who really, I think, has done the best job that I've seen anyone do of giving us practical resources on how to do this. So since Dusty's already mentioned that, here's the other thing you need to do. You need to ask your pastor, your church leadership, talk to your pastors and ask them to support abolition, and then have them network with other churches and pastors for abolition. We are not going to pass a bill of equal protection without the churches leading that movement. And so our churches have to get behind it. The answer to the problem of sin is the gospel of Jesus Christ, and it is the church of Jesus Christ who is called to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to this culture. And so if our churches, led by faithful pastors, do not support abolition, it'll never happen. Politicians are not going to save us. Only the gospel of Jesus Christ will save us, both eternally and from the evils in this world. And the only way that gospel is going to go forth is if it comes from local churches. So get your church involved.
At Woodlawn, we're praying about those things, so thank you for encouraging us in that way.
Yeah, you've been doing a little bit more than that, but yeah.
And I'd like to say to each of you, be intentional. Yes, talk with your legislators. Be intentional to talk to people in your sphere of influence. Use those connections to help push this narrative, this ball down the court. Blake and Brian, you both, in 2 different states, have exerted leadership in Southern Baptist state conventions. Blake, in Oklahoma, what percentage of Oklahoma Baptists do you believe ascribe to abolitionism?
And are vocal about it?
No.
Okay.
Just the average Baptist sitting in the pew in Oklahoma.
Well, I know there's 1,000 that are, for sure, because of Edmond's First Baptist Church. But Now that's hard to put a number on. Right now, it's growing. The percentage is still low, but it is taking root and it is growing. It's hard for me to just throw a percentage out.
Okay.
But I would say it's a remnant, and it's growing every day. We have new people that are coming on board and coming out. So,
Brian.
Was your question in relation to pastors or church members?
Church members, but give us both.
So let me start with pastors. I would say the question that I immediately thought the same thing that Blake did. Do you mean pastors who are privately abolitionist or publicly abolitionist? Because I'd say 80% of Louisiana Baptist pastors, when I speak to them one-on-one, absolutely, they're for abolition and equal protection. It's very difficult to say, well, I believe life begins at fertilization but shouldn't be protected until birth. That's a hard sell if you have any training in theology. But the issue is the fear of man. I would say less than 10% are publicly abolitionist of pastors. And then of church members, 1% maybe are publicly abolitionist. And yet when I talk to them, certainly a majority agree with the principles of abolition and equal protection.
Wow. Friends, would you express your appreciation to these three brothers for their being here?
thank you. Thank you.
And also to our brother Travis from Woodlawn. I said yesterday, thank you, Travis, but express your appreciation to him as well. Life is at stake. The truth of the Word of God implanted in the hearts and the lives of God's people, in my mind, is at stake. We say we believe this Word, and yet we're not motivated to live by it. In some ways, perhaps, we deny the truth of the gospel and the Word by our inaction on this narrative. May God begin a movement in this state and in this country from this conversation to bring an end to abortion and to
Elect Dusty Deevers for Oklahoma Senate.
God bless. Have an incredible afternoon. Thank you for being here.